Good afternoon. Happy Monday. A lot of hullabaloo going on over these Oklahoma bills. There is a Senate bill and there is a House bill, both of which Josh West of the House is involved in. They are substantially identical. This is the engrossed Senate bill. Engrossed means that it has been certified and sent over to the House for them to see if they're going to pass or amend. But I spent some time comparing the House bill and the Senate bill, and they are, like I said, substantially identical. Section 1 is, I think, Section 3. Section 2 is Section 1, and Section 3 is Section 2, I believe, of the House version. And this says telecommunication instead of telephonic. But they're just very small, very minor differences that don't impact the nature of the bill. So I'm just going to go over the engrossed Senate bill. And it says Section 1, new law. A new section of law is to be codified in the Oklahoma statutes as Section 1176 of Title 21 unless there is created a duplication in numbering. And it reads as follows. Well, as it so happens, I have the Section 21, which is their criminal code, their penal code. And there is currently no 1176. 1174, and then 1175, and then 1190. So there is currently no 1176, so that's not going to be a problem, and it's going to create 1176. And it reads as follows. A, it shall be unlawful for a person who by telephonic or electronic communication as defined in Section 1172 of Title 21 of the Oklahoma statutes. So let's go there first. So 1172. And we're looking for the communicator for telephonic or electronic communication. And as used in this section, telecommunication and electronic communication means any type of telephonic, electronic, or radio communications or transmission of signs, signals, data, writings, images, and sounds, or intelligence of any nature by telephone, including cellular telephones, wire, cable, radio, electromagnetic, photoelectronic or photo-optical system, or the creation, display, management, storage, processing, transmission, or distribution of images, text, voice, video, or data by wire, cable, or wireless means, including the internet. The term includes, number 1, a communication initiated by electronic mail, instant message, network call, or facsimile machine, including text, sound, or images. Number 2, a communication made to a pager. Or number 3, a communication including text, sound, or images posted to a social media or other public media source. So it is going to include Facebook videos. It's going to include YouTube videos, BitChute videos, all the videos. So it shall be unlawful for a person to willfully publish on a public online site or forum, attempt to publish, or conspire to publish. So to publish, attempt to publish, or conspire to publish. I believe willfully will apply to all three of those things. Personally identifiable information of a law enforcement officer. So it has to be personally identifiable information. They're going to define that down below. With the intent to threaten, intimidate, harass, or stalk, or, as a result, causes, attempts to cause, or would be reasonably expected to cause substantial emotional distress or financial loss to that person or to that officer's family or household member or intimate partner. So this is where we start to get problematic. We start to get problematic for a lot of reasons. The first reason is that we already have 1172. 1172 makes it unlawful for a person who, by means of a telecommunication or other electronic communication device, i.e. by posting to social media or public media source, to make a telecommunication, blah, 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 text, sound, or images with the intent to terrify, intimidate, harass, or threaten to inflict injury or physical harm to any person or property of that person who makes telecommunication or other electronic communication, i.e. posts a video to social media, whether or not conversation ensues, with intent to put that party in fear of physical harm or death. Or knowingly allow someone else to do it, or conspire to do it. So that already looks like it's illegal to do. But then you have 1173, stalking. Any person who willfully, maliciously, and repeatedly follows or harasses another person in a manner that would cause a reasonable person or member of the immediate family of that person, as defined in subsection F of the section, to feel frightened, intimidated, threatened, harassed, or molested, or actually causes the person being followed or harassed to feel terrorized, frightened, intimidated, threatened, harassed, or molested, shall be guilty of the crime of stalking. So the first issue is that this appears to be redundant. And as we note in Houston v. Hill, if it's already redundant, then we just look at the areas that aren't redundant. Houston v. Hill, if you remember it, it bans people from basically interfering or not interfering, annoying the police. It shall be unlawful for any person to assault, strike, in any manner oppose, molest, abuse, or interrupt any policeman in the execution of his duty, or any person summoned in the aid of making an arrest. And it was already unlawful, the city agreed in Houston v. Hill, for any person to assault, strike, or in any manner, or assault, strike, or molest a police officer. So it's down to basically down to abuse or interrupt, if I remember correctly. All right. So it's unlawful for any person in any manner to oppose, molest, abuse, or interrupt the policeman in his execution of his duty, and it therefore prohibits verbal interruptions of police officers. Well, what this particular one does is it prevents you from saying the name of a police officer. Because remember, personally identifiable information shall include but not be limited to, which is vague, a name. So if you say an officer's name, you have given out personally identifiable information. What if you say place of employment, i.e., Officer Bob of the Oklahoma State Troopers? That's two pieces of personally identifiable information. Or if you post a picture of Officer Bob of the Oklahoma State Troopers, or a video. What about a news interview? What if the news? Think about this. Think about how many times you have seen someone, a police officer, identified by name, by their place of employment, i.e., Oklahoma County Sheriff's Department or whatever. Oklahoma City Police Department. Think about how many times you've seen a police officer identified by name, place of employment, and a photograph. Think about how many times. Think about how many times. What happens if Officer Bob of the Oklahoma State Troopers is arrested is placed on leave, unpaid leave, and arrested for allegedly molesting a child? and a news agency dares to report on it. There's no defense of the truth in this. Is that going to cause substantial emotional distress to Officer Bob and or his family? To have Officer Bob's face, name, employment blasted on the news? I think it would. Law enforcement officer and family or household member mean what you think they would mean. But that's too far. That's a couple bridges too far. So in Houston v. Hill, they tried to say, well, we can do this because these are the fighting word exceptions. And in Houston v. Hill, the court said, no, it's not. Critical to our decision was the fact that the ordinance punished only spoken words and was not limited in scope to fighting words that by their very utterance inflict injury or tend to incite an immediate breach of the peace. Moreover, in a concurring opinion, Justice Powell suggested that even the fighting words exception recognized in Chaplinsky might require a narrower application in cases involving words addressed to a police officer, because a properly trained officer may reasonably be expected to exercise a higher degree of restraint than the average citizen, and thus be less likely to respond belligerently to fighting words. Well, you're going to say, well, this particular statute is not limiting itself to fighting words. What is it limiting itself to? Well, it's threat. That's what it should be limited to. That's what 1172 and 1173 are limited to. See, look at the language. Terrorized, frightened, intimidated, threatened, harassed, or molested. This one has obscene in it. Obscene, lewd, lascivious. That's an exception, by the way. Obscenity is an exception to the First Amendment. But then it goes on to, intimidate, harass, threaten to inflict injury or physical harm, in fear of physical harm or death. I mean, this one is if you call whether or not the conversation occurs, and you keep making it like if you call someone over and over and over again with the intent to annoy, abuse, threaten, or harass them. Again, the speech isn't of value at that point, and it's not looking at speech. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to say anything. You could just call them over and over and over again, and that's annoying. So this is not specifically targeting speech, which puts it in a different analysis. But this one is publishing. You're publishing, right? So this one is speech. You're publishing something, a name, a birth date, an address, a telephone number, a driver's license number, a social security number, place of employment, mother's maiden name, a photograph, or any other realistic likeness. But it's not limited to that. It includes, but it's not limited to. So who knows? Who knows? Is the average person going to be able to read this and know what he can or can't say? No, he will not. Probably just facially unconstitutional. But as far as the threat is concerned, this is Watts v. United States. And whatever the willfulness requirement implies, the statute initially requires the government to prove a true threat. We do not believe that the kind of political hyperbole indulged in by petitioner fits within that statutory term. This guy said that if he was drafted, the first thing he would do would be to point his gun at LBJ. Somewhere in here. And now I have already received my draft classification as 1A, and I have got to report for my physical this Monday coming. I am not going. If they ever make me carry a rifle, the first man I want to get in my sights is LBJ. For we must interpret the language Congress chose against a background of profound national commitment to the principle that debate on public issues should be uninhibited, robust, and wide open, and that it may well include vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasantly sharp attacks on government and public officials. The language of the political arena, like the language used in labor disputes, is often vituperative, abusive, and inexact. We agree with the petitioner that his only offense here was a kind of crude, offensive method of stating a political opposition to the president, taken in context, and regarding the expressly conditional nature of the statement and reaction of the listeners, we cannot see how it would be interpreted otherwise. So at the end of the day, does this statute prohibit filming police? No, it does not. The statute deals with publishing what you have filmed. Publishing what you have filmed. Specifically, a photograph or any other realistic likeness, like, for example, video. And remember, it's not included. And imagine, if you will, what would happen if, say, for example, Derek Chauvin of the George Floyd fame. Do you think he enjoyed having his name, his place of employment, and a video of him with his knee on George Floyd's neck? Do you think he enjoyed that being published? Or do you think it cost him substantial emotional distress and financial loss? Now, regardless of your position on whether or not Chauvin is guilty or should be guilty or what have you, that video should not be punishable. Taking that video and publishing that video should not be punishable. But it would be under the statute, which is why I don't think this statute will be constitutional. So do with that as you will. It is too early, by the way, at this point, to say what the final product is going to be. This is pretty garbage at this point, but this is half-baked. You're trying to eat the cake when it's half-baked. So everybody needs to just wait and see what the House is going to do. But if you do live in Oklahoma, I strongly suggest that you talk to your senators and your representatives in your state Senate and your state House. Talk to the governor, express your displeasure. This is pretty garbage, and this is going to be an expensive lawsuit for somebody somewhere. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.